So let me start by welcoming everybody to the 2020 edition of International Interns Day, which, as you see, is taking place remotely. My name is Matteo De Simone, and I'm one of the co-founders of the FII Internship initiative. Happy to see very distinguished guests today, as well as many people interested in this event. We had so far about more than 130 registrations. So we're happy to see that our event has good success so far. Maybe just a couple of housekeeping comments before we start. As I'm sure you're already quite familiar with video conferencing by now, but it's better to repeat them. So we will have the speakers and the panelists and the moderators that will be in this WebEx conversation, while the event will be screened on YouTube and Facebook. I ask everybody who is in the WebEx conversation to please keep your microphone muted when you are not speaking. And when you are speaking, of course, to turn on your microphone, and if possible, also the video. As I was mentioning, we are screening the event through YouTube and Facebook streams. So I invite all the participants that would like to pose questions or have comments during the panel sessions to please write them in the respective comment section of the platform that they're using, and our moderator will do their best to address as many as we can, given the time constraints. And finally, I would like to thank all the participants that have accepted the invitation today. I'm sure the program will be very dense and very interesting. We will close in about 2 hours the event. So we will have now some introductory statements, followed by a keynote speech by USG Inger Andersen, then a panel from FII speakers who will present the latest internship report. This will be followed by a HR panel from colleagues from UN organization that will present internship programs, good practices in the UN system. And finally, we will close with a panel from the experiences of interns and former interns. Maybe just let me give you a very brief introduction of the organizers of this event, which is the FII Internship Initiative. Just briefly, it's a youth-led initiative that was founded in 2015, whose mission is to advocate for accessible internships, fair working conditions for interns in the UN system at large. Currently has chapters in Geneva, New York, and Nairobi. The main activities of the initiative are, of course, advocacy for fair and quality internships, and this includes several areas such as public advocacy, advocacy directly with member states and UN agencies, research activities for evidence-based advocacy, such as the report that we'll be presenting later today, and finally, support to interns and interns organizations, supporting the creation of intern boards and connecting the efforts of various groups together for bigger impact. The International Interns Day, so what we're celebrating today, is a worldwide celebration that has been established for the first time by the European Commission in 2015. And we have been, as FII Internship Initiative, we have been celebrating it since 2017. The first one was in 2017, hosted by the International Labour Organization, where we had the honor to have the presence of Mr. Guy Rado, the Director General of the ILO. The following year, in 2018, it was hosted by WHO, as the organization recently had reformed its internship program to include stipends, and we were honored by the presence of the Director General, Mr. Tedros. And finally, last year, we were welcomed by the UNHCR with the kind participation of the Deputy High Commissioner, Kelly Clements. This year, of course, the format had to change a bit because of the pandemic. We could not hold it physically, but this at the same time gave us the opportunity to welcome people and speakers and guests from different parts of the world. This also allowed us to have the honor to have today with us Ms. Inger Andersen, Under Secretary General of the United Nations and Executive Director of the UN Environment Programme, which we thank very much for accepting the invitation to be with us today. Just as a quick word of introduction before giving her the floor, Ms. Andersen has more than 30 years of experience in international development economics, in environmental sustainability and strategy operations. Prior to being appointed as Executive Director of the UN Environment Programme, she was Director of the International Union of Conservation of Nature and previously served as leadership position in the World Bank, including Vice President of the Middle East and North Africa, Vice President for Sustainable Development and Head of the Fund Council of the Consultative Group for International Agricultural Research. Moreover, Mr. Andersen has worked for more than 12 years at the United Nations in various field locations. And as I said, we're very happy to host her here, also recognizing positive contribution and commitment to the welfare and the well-being of interns in her organization. So without further ado, I would like to give you the floor. Ms. Andersen, please, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much, Matteo, and to you and to everyone behind organizing this. It's really important to organize and to get together and discuss at this time of complexity, because we are indeed living in a very unprecedented time. And this pandemic has gotten personal to most of us. We're stuck at home. Many of us have faced illnesses in our families, or some of us indeed lost loved ones. So it's a really complex time. People have lost their jobs, schools have been closed, and your generation, this generation that's present here, you're facing this, and this is not the first time you're facing an economic crisis of a certain depth. And so in the span of a decade, you've been hit not once, but twice with this uncertainty. And this is just as you're starting out your careers and your personal trajectories. And so I recognize that the future may look bleak to you at this time, which is why I celebrate all the more the fact that you have continued to work and that you are gathering at this time, because it is exactly that drive that you carry, that commitment that you carry, that we need to get the planet towards a better trajectory. And history teaches us that when we have these unsettling times, it is groups and communities and individuals that rise to leadership, rise to innovate, rise to imagine, to change the trajectory that we are on. And whilst right now we're seeing that glimmer of hope at the end of the tunnel with vaccines, etc., we also all know that that is not just a simple solution, because in the meantime, whilst there may be a vaccine for COVID-19, there is no vaccine for the planet. And so in UNEP, we speak about three planetary crises: the climate crisis, the nature and biodiversity crisis, and the pollution and waste crisis. And these three crises are what you're inheriting, is our mess, my generation's mess. And I'm afraid that that's what we're leaving you. So we speak to, therefore, that green recovery, those stimulus funds that we are now borrowing from you, because they're all being borrowed and your generation will have to pay it back. We cannot, on the one hand, leave you with a big debt, and on the other hand, leave you with a broken planet. So now then, therefore, your commitment in wherever you are in the UN is more meaningful than ever, because that work that you do to make that our world and planet a better place, to work towards the Sustainable Development Goals, has probably never been more meaningful. Colleagues, at this year of the 75th anniversary of the United Nations, at this time, there was a survey, and many of you will be aware. It was a survey where 90% of respondents and the youth category, if you like, overwhelmingly said that multilateralism is needed, global cooperation is the only way forward. And you know what? That gives me hope, It gives me hope, because where others, politicians, older generations may have gotten cynical, may have thought that one can close doors to countries and assume that we can survive and be a-okay. The answer is we cannot. And the answer is that it is only multilateralism that can deliver that world that we all seek, a fairer, just, and more inclusive world. And that is where I see that in this survey, when 90% of those respond in the youth category say multilateralism matters, it gives me hope. And it gives me hope that there are people like yourselves who have put up your hand and said we're willing and interested to be interns at the UN. Secretary General Antonio Guterres often speaks about how youth are the biggest ally. You take some of the causes that matter most, and not just into the office, but you take them onto the street, you take them into the voting booth, you take them into civic action, you take them over dinner tables, and you take them to the university campuses, you take them to the future. And I thank you for that, because that's the only way that we can continue to enhance and protect what we believe as United Nations staff, namely that multilateralism, solidarity, inclusion, transparency, fairness is the way that we can go. So that power that you hold, it is quite important to recognize it. The power that you have when you organized yourselves, the power that you had when you found your voice, the power that you have when you're meeting on a platform, in spite of a pandemic, a platform such as this. Hold on to that power. You've heard the Secretary General say several times that power is rarely given and that he believes that power is taken. So take it and hold on to it and don't let it go, because that's the way in which you can change the world for the better. And this year, we saw that power being taken by the younger people, starting with a very ugly murder in the US, and then the call for and recognition of institutional racism and Black Lives Matter. And it is at this point really important that we also in the United Nations engage in a dialogue on racism and understand that covert and overt racism also exists, and be mindful of this, and be mindful such that we can be that time when we open our eyes to this, to hidden biases and unseen thoughts that we may be holding that can prevent our organization from becoming into its very fullest of perspectives. So your power, the power that we've seen in terms of youth organizing across the world on Black Lives Matter, the power that we've seen in terms of organizations on Me Too and He for She, the power that we've seen on mobilizing for climate justice, the power that we've seen in mobilizing for jobs and for opportunity, keep that power and keep that hope alive. Because at this point, really, we are in this intergenerational, we are in a realization of the intergenerational inequity, and your voice calling for equity matters greatly. So continue to push, continue that collective engagement for fair treatment and for a sustainable and inclusive future. And I want to say that I recognize your campaign for a fair and meaningful internship and for paid internship. That's a campaign that you hold, and it gives you a platform to engage across the UN on these issues. So we have to think, though, that the UN is probably a rather hierarchical place. It's probably a place that has been hierarchical through its 75 years of history. And it doesn't easily change. So how do we make it flatter? How do we make it more responsive? How do we make it more nimble? How do we make it more impact-driven? How do we make it more self-reflective? These are the kind of things that you can help make it. You can organize and you can push for change. You can bring yourselves into various initiatives, just like you're doing right now. You can demand to be heard, whether it's, as I said, on the street or in the boardroom or anywhere in between. You can find allies, and I know that you're good at that, who can be sponsors of your ideas and enter your ideas into places where you may not have access. And you can be a part of the UN or outside the UN, but never stop trying to disrupt for making a better place, and never trying to stop to disrupt for getting beyond the current status quo. Be that leader. Take the initiative, learn from others, acknowledge your mistakes when you make them, be open to possibilities, be feminist in your leadership, strive to serve others. After all, serving is what the UN is all about. Be empathetic and believe that better is possible. And finally, dare to believe that the future is possible. These are not my words. Dare to believe that a better future is possible. These are the words of Mai Zijing, who is a young student who won the UN 75 essay competition. Dare to believe that the future is possible. And I believe that you dared, because coming into the United Nations as interns, I have to give to you, on behalf of all the colleagues in the UN who get a salary, my thanks for your commitment, for your drive, for your thinking outside the box, for your inspiration, for your willingness to transform. You are in many ways the lifeblood of the organization. You give your time, your commitment, your drive, etc. And all of that you do to make the world a better place. So it's up to us who sit in positions that get paid to ensure that you are looked after properly, to ensure that your internships are meaningful, and to continue to strive for fairer internships ahead. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Back over to you, Matteo.
Thank you very much, the Secretary General. This is really appreciated, and I thank you for your encouraging and heartwarming words. I think we really appreciate, and I'm talking on behalf of the Fair Internship Initiative, you underscoring the fundamental values of solidarity, inclusion, transparency, and fairness. I think what we do in our initiative is really, on the one hand, to ensure that there would be, as you were mentioning, a fairer, more just and more inclusive world. And we think that in order to have this, we also need a fairer, more just and more inclusive multilateralism. Because ultimately, we are all committed to multilateralism, and therefore, I haven't responded to that survey that you were mentioning myself, but if I had the chance to, I would definitely have subscribed to the majority of the respondents saying that multilateralism is necessary and the need, especially in this difficult moment. So in order to stick with the time, I would like to thank you again, Ms. Anderson, for joining us today. It has been a real pleasure to have you here. And we will now transition to the next part of the program, which is a presentation of the report that has been recently prepared by the FII Internship Initiative, based on a survey that was conducted in 2019. The presenters will be Arabella Comin and Jenny Ng from the initiative, and I give them now the floor.
Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are at the moment in the world. I am Arabella, and I will be presenting the first half of the report. I would like to also first echo Matteo's thank you to Ms. Anderson for joining us today and for her kind and inspirational words. So to begin with, I will be presenting the 2019 Global Survey results before passing over to my colleague, Jenny, who will present the results of the COVID survey that we did earlier this year. So that is on the slide there, some brief information on the responses that we received. But for a little bit of background, I would just like to explain a little bit about the design of the survey. As some of you may or may not be aware, the Joint Inspection Unit, which is an independent, evaluative, investigative body for the UN, produced a report in 2018 which assessed the UN internship programs across the system. It produced a benchmarking framework with a series of recommendations that were intended to try and improve or present ways in which UN internship programs could be improved. And so this benchmarking framework that was presented in that report was the kind of framework within which we developed the survey. So the results are intended to address each of these aspects or each of these 4 areas, and I will present the key figures from each of these areas There are multiple different aspects which make up each of these benchmarking areas, but I will be highlighting the key figure that really examines and demonstrates the disparities between the experiences of paid and unpaid interns within the UN system. So the first benchmarking area is related to application and selection process. This incorporates both the duration and comprehensiveness of the application and recruitment process. But before moving any further, I would just like to clarify the 3 categories that you see on the screen there. These will be used throughout this presentation. Paid refers to interns that receive 15% or more of the daily subsistence allowance for their duty station. Underpaid interns receive less than 15% and unpaid receive no financial support. So, as you can see here, paid interns are much more likely to receive administrative support during their onboarding process than unpaid or underpaid interns. The onboarding process includes help with visa applications, which can be quite complicated. And this administrative support is sometimes the first real interaction that interns have with their host organizations beyond having been selected and interviewed or whatever the selection process was. So as can be seen here, there is this strong disparity between paid and unpaid interns. And this reflects a trend that there is differential treatment based on payment status, and this trend is seen throughout the rest of the benchmark areas as well. So to move to the second area, this is the onboarding and internship period. It covers the support, entitlements, and protections that interns receive during their and which they should be made aware of during their onboarding period. Now, everyone should feel secure that they have the right to sick leave and general leave, the latter of which is important not only for work-life balance, but also mental health. As can be seen here, the vast majority, almost all paid interns have their sick leave and general leave entitlements specified in their contract, as opposed to less than 50% of unpaid interns. These differences again reflect the trend, but it also highlights the fact that this support is more formalized for paid interns. This is honestly quite disappointing to see that unpaid interns receive such little formalization of these entitlements, which should be available to anyone in employment of any kind. So yeah. Moving on to the third benchmarking area. This relates to the completion of the internship and includes career development support that interns receive at the end of their internships, as well as more general end of internship procedures. Now, this figure has a lot of I don't knows, but it doesn't undermine the importance of the results. So this relates to whether or not organizations refer to interns' feedback to improve the internship program. When there is a system for feedback available, it should be that the feedback loop is closed and that any feedback received is used to improve the program that is that feedback is being given on. So one thing that is important is that people who provide feedback understand how their feedback will be used. As we can be seen here, many interns don't actually know how their feedback will be used. But in cases where they are aware of how the feedback will be used, whether or not the use will be, when the use or not of feedback is made explicit, the results demonstrate that unpaid interns' feedback is far less likely to be incorporated into the improvement or reform of the program than paid interns. This further reflects a difference between the way interns are perceived and interacted with by their host organizations. So the final area of the benchmarking framework relates to the alignment of UN internship programs with UN values. This refers to the extent to which the UN system is inclusively accessible to candidates irrespective of their geographical or socioeconomic backgrounds. An inclusively accessible internship program should have similar representation of different geographical and socioeconomic backgrounds to other UN system programs. But as can be seen here, UN interns do not equally represent the diversity of country income levels. The results therefore demonstrate that there are systemic barriers for young professionals from lower income countries. The survey also provided the opportunity for respondents to provide more information about this. And some of the barriers identified by respondents include financial inequities, so the ability for individuals to actually finance their internship period, legal inequities relating to the tendency for there to be more complicated visa application processes for individuals from lower income countries, as well as informational barriers relating to internship postings. Yet, in spite of these telling differences in experience based on payment status, there have been some positive stories of reform in the UN system. Since UNHCR's reform, which began in 2018, we have continued to see some encouraging trends of reform throughout the UN, including at the WHO, UNDP, and UN Women throughout 2019 and 2020. Now, the WHO in January of this year began a new program to provide stipends for interns who need support, providing a stipend at the level of 20% of the daily subsistence allowance, which is actually in line with our recommendation and the recommendation included in the Joint Inspection Unit report. The remaining 3 other organizations did not meet this specific recommendation, but their reforms are nonetheless in the right direction. UNDP now provides interns with a monthly stipend of 10% of the daily subsistence allowance, but this is capped at a payment of $1,000 a month. UNHCR and UN Women now also provide a stipend equivalent to 10% of the daily subsistence allowance, but they do not have a cap on what that can be as a monthly rate. So FII is very grateful to have seen that these reforms are moving in the right direction, but we encourage other UN entities to undertake similar reform processes. And we would like to give special applaud to, or special congratulations to the WHO, who introduced their stipend at the level recommended by both us and the Joint Inspection Unit. So thank you for listening to this part of the presentation, and I would now like to hand over to my colleague Jenny for the COVID-19 survey results.
Thank you, Arabella, for your presentation. So I will continue on for the second part of the report. So on the second part of the report, it will be about the COVID-19's impact on the internships. So first of it would be the survey that we have conducted in February 2020. So the survey lasts until April, and we have received 223 respondents all across the globe due to 37 UN entities and 16 countries. And the most representative would be Switzerland, Kenya, and the USA. I think from the survey, it is clear that most interns have been feeling very confused across the board, regardless whether they are paid or unpaid. And one recount that they have received many announcements about the COVID arrangements for staff in the mailbox, but none was about interns. And also on the screen now, you will see a quote from our survey. We say that all opportunities for networking, mentoring, learning, cross-training, and attending events are gone, and they are now just an unpaid consultant. So this is very reflective of the interns' experience, especially the unpaid ones during this very difficult time, especially when for unpaid interns, their learning experience have been stripped during the internship period. It is very illustrative of the confusion and the frustration they must be feeling during the pandemic. And then, because the survey mainly reflects on the interns' experience during the pandemic, while it was still ongoing, so we have decided to also inquire the HR departments of UN entities to seek out the official response for the internship responses on the pandemic. So this was done in May 2020. We have gotten in touch with 13 UN entities, and among them the ILO, the International Trade Center, UNHCR, UNOPS, UNRISD, WHO, and WIPO had replied to our inquiries. And from their responses, we have observed some good practice. So first of all would be flexible arrangements. So for interns at the WIPO and ILO, they have specified that interns are allowed to remain at the duty stations or go back to their home country if they so required. And also in some agencies such as the ILO, we have observed that they have been made clear that they would extend the internship for up to 3 months, especially for interns from high-risk zone, in case they cannot travel back to their home country. And also, it is a good practice that we have observed, gotten a response from the HR department that they would help in regarding the interns' legal status. For example, in Switzerland, interns have to have a legal status. They have to obtain a carte de légitimation in order to remain in the country. And agencies such as the ILO, the WIPO, the WHO has, because of their extensions of the internship, they also help with acquiring an extension for the carte de légitimation. And also in agencies such as WHO, they have provided support for repatriation arrangements. So for interns that have decided to return to their home country, especially during their internship or while they finish their internship, WHO has arranged repatriation flights. And also the ILO provides reimbursements for high travel costs during this period of time. And among all the agency, the UNEP, the environmental program, also provided a resiliency fund of $500 for the interns to relieve of their immediate financial problems. So I think it is from this inquiries to the HR department that we have a much clearer discrepancy between the paid and unpaid programs. Paid programs generally provide much more flexibilities and much more support and communications to the interns. And if anything, if interns receive stipends, then they would be less likely to experience immediate and financial crisis. While unpaid internships generally are less flexible, for example, UNRISD does not allow their interns to travel outside of the duty stations, which would create a lot of frustrations for interns. And then in the next slides, we could see that there will be some, in conclusion to our findings for the surveys and also the inquiries to the HR department, we have drawn up some recommendations. We recommend that agencies should provide a stipend to prevent any immediate financial crisis, as that we have observed that stipend actually can provide a safety zone for all the interns. And at the very least, we think that it is very important to provide a relief fund as much as possible so that during a crisis period, the interns would experience less of a problem. Also, we recommend that each agency should draw up a contingency plan, especially targeting and tailored to interns, so that when in case of crisis, there will be timely communications, especially considering interns' condition. They are not staff members, and very often in the UN system, they are unpaid. And also, it is to relieve a prolonged confusions that was created by crises such as the COVID-19 pandemic. And then we also recommend the agency should provide support, whether it is legal or administrative, to help interns to extend their legal status, to help with repatriations, and most importantly, be flexible in their support. Next is to provide work from home equipment teleworking doesn't imply that there is no cost for the interns. Very often, interns have to now afford the office equipment, a computer, Wi-Fi, and living costs on their own. Then all of these costs should also be considered. And finally, and I'm sure that most of us are feeling the same with the prolonged teleworking experience, and it is quite frustrating. So therefore, we recommend the agency should resume in-person internship program as soon as possible. Most internship program has been suspended and will not resume until 2021. And as the quote I showed earlier, in-person experience is often the most precious and important part of an internship. Therefore, we think as Fair Internship Initiative that remote unpaid internship is not a replacement for any in-person experience. So as such, we are concluding our presentations on the report. For more details finding, please check our 2019 internship report, which will be published today. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Jenny and Arabella, for the inspiring presentation. We have 10 more minutes before moving to the next session. So if there are questions from the audience or from the participants, you are welcome to take the floor. If not, I just wish to reiterate what the presenter has said, that the report itself will be published today on the Fair Internship Initiative website, fairinternshipinitiative.wordpress.com. And we invite you to take a look. If you would like to receive more information or a print copy, please let us know, get in touch with us, and we'll be happy to provide this to you. So perhaps we can take advantage of the fact that we're slightly early with the program to have a bit more time for the next session. So if there are no questions, I will move to the panel from HR colleagues from various UN organizations that have been selected on the basis of their good practices. And I will then pass the floor to Diana Baron, also from the Fair Internship Initiative, who would be chairing and moderating this panel. Diana, you have the floor.
Thank you, Matteo. And yeah, I can see that our panelists are connected, so I think we can start the panel a few minutes in advance, which is great because we have a short amount of time and a very honorable people that we would like to hear what they have to say. So I will, the topic of this panel is presenting internship programs and good practices during a pandemic, as you can see in our agenda. And we're joined by, I'm gonna introduce shortly our panelists, or 4 panelists. If I mispronounce your names, please correct me. My apologies in advance. We're joined by Ms. Christine Terhanian, Talent Acquisition Manager from WIPO, Mr. Greg Langham, Regional Human Resources Advisor from UNOPS, Mr. Saeed Aminullah Razuli, Associate HR Officer from UNHCR, and Mr. Rafael Trejo, Focal Point for Internships from IOM. So first of all, thank you for joining us. You can turn on your cameras if you haven't done so already. We're really honored to have you here with us. And we have 40 minutes for this panel. And as everyone can see, a diverse group of panelists. So I thought it will be best to keep it interactive. We've prepared several questions based on the topics we sent beforehand to the panelists. And I invite each of them to share their perspective and insight. During the panel, I will try to look at the live chat on YouTube, and if we have any remaining time, I will try to ask any questions posed there. So if you're watching us across the globe, please feel free to ask your questions there. So I will ask the first question, which is not solely directed at life post-COVID-19, but in general. And I would like to start with you, Christine, please. I would like to hear from you what, in your opinion and from your experience, makes an internship program successful. And given that, what are the main characteristics of the internship program in WIPO?
Thank you, Diana, and good afternoon, everyone. So from my experience, there's a few key factors that make an internship program successful. Learning, of course, but when we say learning, it's not only on a technical level, but also in terms of overall organizational functioning, operational challenges. And this comes really through exposure, participation of the intern in different projects, events, assignment of meaningful work, not only routine or merely administrative tasks, and the opportunity to work with different colleagues and teams, not only with one supervisor or one person, but really an opportunity to engage and network and get a feel for different people in the organization. We also offer, and I think this is key also in the learning of the intern, the possibility to enroll in formal trainings. Another key factor is adequate supervision, guidance, mentoring, and feedback to be provided to the intern. And treating the intern really like any other staff in terms of planning work, setting expectations or objectives, and regular check-in meetings. I also think that a setup, what is needed for a successful internship experience is a setup that enables the intern to bring fresh perspectives to the work, because the organization also benefits on multiple levels from the internship, not only as an additional resource that it gets through the intern, but the perspectives the intern brings in terms, including knowledge of the latest research in their specialist fields, use of technology, and other new ideas that I think are greatly valuable for the organization. As well as the last, I think, key point is the feedback of the interns themselves. So the program cannot be considered successful unless the interns themselves say that it was, or that they give positive feedback on their experience. So in this regard, since January 2019, and in response to the recommendations of the JIU report, we've introduced surveys of the interns, and the data from 2019 showed that 100% of respondents were satisfied with their overall internship experience. Some characteristics of our internship program at WIPO is that we keep it small. So we actually have one internship slot per program in the organization, which we feel is a successful approach because it maintains the high quality of the program. It allows interns really to be placed where they are most needed, which ensures meaningful work assignments, adequate supervision. And this also means that we offer diverse internship opportunities in all areas of the organization's work, rather than only a few technical areas. So really there's an intern in each area of our work, including traditional support areas, finance, procurement, HR. We also have 3 slots open exclusively to nationals of unrepresented member states to increase diversity, and we actively promote the program through universities in unrepresented member states. And we also provide support, which we'll get to later, which makes the program more accessible. And as of January 2020, we accept undergraduate students who are in their 3rd or 4th year of study or who need to complete an internship as part of their degree requirement. So this is a new element in our internship program. Thank you.
Thank you so much for teaching us about WIPO. And now I go to Mr. Greg Langham, the same question for UNOPS.
Thank you very much. I think we probably on the same page as Christina has said in many of the areas, but we do not have a standard program that we open every year. We have open internships that we advertise throughout the year in our global workforce. Interns are considered an integral part of our personnel, of our global workforce. We don't treat them differently. We have a 5-pronged approach to our internships. The aim of our internship is to have a meaningful work experience for the intern, to give them a chance for unique learning, and for them to be to have more experience for employability in the future. We look at giving them a very flexible and meaningful experience. So our internships are anywhere from 1 month to 12 months at a time. We remunerate them. So at the moment, our policy is to give about 15% of the extended DSA per day multiplied by 30 so that you get a monthly stipend. In Geneva, I think it's about $1,240 a month. Plus, we also pay, based on where the intern comes from, we give them travel allowance. So that's another thing. In Geneva, we also support them because it's mandated by legislation that they have Swiss health and accident insurance. So we support them with a grant to buy that insurance as well. So that's on the remuneration. And the other one is that we have a variety of opportunities, as I said before, that we advertise throughout the year. It's more than 100 internship positions in our global workforce every year. And then we have the internships, the interns where it is a mutual experience where they bring their new learning and their new academic knowledge to the work of UNOPS. And so it's an integral part of how we look at internships at UNOPS. So that, in a sense, is how we look at our program. And as I just want to repeat again, that interns are not considered as interns and put in a box. They are part of our central workforce and are treated just like we treat all the rest of our personnel. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you for this response about UNOPS. I'm going to jump to Rafael from IOM. The same question for you. I would like to hear what, in your opinion, makes an internship program successful, and what are the main characteristics of the internship program in IOM?
Thank you, Diana. Please let me know if you can hear me fine. And if there's any problem with the connection, just let me know, please.
For now, it's great. I will let you know if I don't.
Great, thank you. Well, I think that IOM ticks many boxes of what we consider to be a successful internship program, which is very much in line with what my colleagues from other agencies have said so far. We believe that giving them tangible work experience, something that is relevant to their careers, onto their interests, onto their background and education, is a central part of the time they spend with us. We would normally say that this is a two-way street. We provide them, they come and work for IOM for between 2 and 9 months, which is the time the duration of internships with IOM. And in return, they should get their not only paid, but they also should get tangible work experience, which gives them like a relevant first step in their career. So we very much try to make internships interesting to them. Normally, when we get the terms of reference, we sometimes give them back to the hiring managers and tell them, spice this up a little bit, please make it more interesting and more appealing to interns. So when they are posted online, it includes learning opportunities, acquiring skills, taking part in different seminars, which are happening all the time in IOM. And another thing we'd like to highlight is that we are trying our best to give internship opportunities not only in our headquarters in Geneva, but also in the regional and country offices around the world, in the special liaison offices in Africa and in North America, in our administrative centers, and so that people, especially from the global north, can go also to the global south and get that kind of experience, and people from the global south can go northward and mix and provide their different backgrounds and intakes, which is, we think, very beneficial. IOM does pay like other UN agencies, and it depends, the percentage of the daily subsistence allowance depends on first whether the education level of the candidate. So the higher you go, like if you have a master's degree, you get a little extra, and so on and so forth. And also the geographic location, of course, and on whether or not the candidate was selected from the duty station or came from abroad. So if you come from abroad, you can also get a little extra for, additional costs. And one last thing we'd like to mention is that we are all the time looking to increase the partnerships IOM has with different governments and with different universities, which are not only in the global north, but each time more and more in non-OECD DAC countries. So we try to approach governments from different institutions and governments around the world so that they also can sponsor their interns and provide their nationals or their students with the opportunity to intern with IOM and maybe, you know, give them that first step in the UN system.
Thank you. You weren't cut off at all.
Okay, good.
Good internet connection. Thank you. Finally, I'm returning to Mr. Said Aminullah Razuli from UNHCR. We would like to hear you address the same question, please. What, from your experience, makes the internship program successful, and what are the characteristics of the internship programs in UNHCR? Aminullah, you're muted, so if you can unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Now, yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Diana. I have a very long name, Sayed Aminullah Rasuli, but people call me Aminullah, the short form, the middle.
So is it Said then?
I don't know. In this culture, from the country I am, normally people who have three names, you're called with the middle name.
Oh, really?
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. We can hear you. Go ahead.
Hello?
I think there's a slight delay. So we can hear you perfectly well, but there's a slight delay.
Thank you very much, Diana. Again, first of all, I'm very happy for the invitation. And regarding the internship program in UNHCR, again, I'm very happy to say that not only myself as a coordinator of the internship program in Budapest, but many of the senior management members, they are quite impressed with the internship program within the organization. Today, before I was coming here, I reviewed a report that we had, that currently we have 262 interns active in UNHCR, while this number was years comparing. One for the working the humanitarian organizations, especially management, administration, and finance. Second thing is that we always leave that as our organization with innovative. Now I'm happy to say that I'm all aware about that. Interns are very welcome organizations, and we can make it in place and normally both in field and also in the headquarters. My colleagues are observing that.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Your internet connection is cutting you off a bit, so maybe if all the other panelists and myself can turn off the cameras while you're speaking, that will be helpful. So go ahead, we'll turn off the cameras now. Continue, please.
And me too, shall I also? I think it will be good if I can also switch it off, no? Because then you'll have a better sound quality.
That can be helpful. Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfectly well.
Very good. So the first thing what I should start that the units are put in place a very proper system for addressing the queries and implementing the system along the around the globe according to the policies or procedures they have. They already have them in place, and for that purpose, we have a specific mailbox within UNITSURE. It is called UNITSURE internship mailbox, and that we found it very helpful because this is not one of the core sectors UNITSURE is handling, but whenever any of the colleagues, when they have questions, this mailbox is regularly monitored, and they receive answers within less than 24 hours. And this is found very good with the feedback system. And also the feedback system, we all have the evaluation form for the interns. When they finish the internship, they're providing their own feedback to the managers that how they found the organization. The terms of reference, I think this is one of the, I know that in each organization, when interns, they're going there, so of course they have interns, and they have the terms of reference, but what we are doing that it will be reviewed like a couple of times, these internship terms of reference. We count on this one as one of the basic things on how to make a good result, because as an example, I can say that several times maybe we can find that the terms of reference for internship, this is quite similar with one of the general service or a national officer positions. It's a copy paste, and this is thoroughly reviewed to the managers, to the HR officers in the field, or by the APRS and the headquarter. And then if something is not matching the job requirement of an intern, then we are going to drop them from the terms of reference. And regarding the payments, I think here I found it in your recommendation that we have paid or non-paid interns. And this was one of the recommendations that the paid interns, they made a good result. So we can say that we do not have non-paid interns, but they are all paid according to that, what we discussed now, like 10% of DSA in each duty station. But the ceiling, what I heard from one of our colleagues in this presentation, that UNITSURE may not have the ceiling. No, we also have the ceiling of 1,000. The payment should not exceed $1,000 US. And we have two types of arrangement for the sponsor. One is a sponsored interns, and another one is non-sponsored interns. The one which was sponsored internships, those are based on a memorandum of understanding with one of the sponsoring institutions. We have currently like around 3 or 4 institutions, mainly universities. They're sponsoring their interns, and the interns are coming and having their sponsorship internship in UNITSURE. And the major part is the non-sponsored. Non-sponsored means that those are the ones who are receiving their food and transportation allowance from UNHCR. That's regarding the payment. And one of the questions I saw in our email communication, and also I heard here regarding the COVID situation, I think in almost in all organizations, they have this arrangement of teleworking, and UNITSURE, as you're aware, that teleworking was not approved for interns before that. But during the context of COVID-19 situation, the director of DHR exceptionally approved teleworking for the interns. They can work from home, and we are following the WHO instructions regarding the pandemic. and also the instructions from the local public health authorities. And whenever the situation allows, then all staff will return. But at the moment all staff return, then the interns should also return to office, and they should work from office. But for the time being, I can say that almost all of our interns, they're teleworking from home. This was the arrangement during teleworking. So this was all from my side. If you have any specific question, I'm here.
Brilliant. Thank you, Aminullah. I would like to go on now to the second question, now a bit more relating to COVID, life post COVID-19. And Aminullah has already given us kind of a preview. I would like to start with you, Christine, again. If you could please share first. I think I don't think you shared from like about what kind of support is given to interns normally. So we would like to hear that from you as well. And also, if you could please elaborate on your organization's response to challenges posed by COVID-19 in 2020 and how it prepares to continue dealing with them in 2021.
Thank you, Diana. So in terms of the regular support provided to our interns, we do offer stipends, and I think we were one of the first organizations to do so. But our stipends have been recently revised on 2 levels, and that's as of January this year. So there's been an increase of stipend for interns without a master's degree, because we have 2 categories of internships, one for students without a master's and one for those who have almost completed their master's or already have obtained it. And so for the lower category, it used to be only 500 Swiss francs a month, and we've increased that to 1,570 Swiss francs per month, which is 19% of the monthly DSA. And the stipend for the graduates remains at the 2,000 Swiss franc level, but there's been an introduction of an additional 70 francs, and I'll speak about that in a moment. But the overall amount for the graduate group is 25% of the monthly DSA, which is well above the recommended percentage. So the inclusion of this additional 70 francs per month is to cover the cost of commuting locally here in Geneva. And this was also continued to be paid during the pandemic when interns were not required to come to the office. Travel expenses are also covered for interns coming from developing and least developed countries. We felt that this would be an important new support to be offered to really make the program more accessible. And as we saw in the data that you shared as well from FII, the internship programs are unfortunately traditionally more accessible to middle or upper income individuals who can afford to make the trip, who can afford to cover their expenses during internship. So we felt this was an important way to make our program more diverse and accessible. So what have we done during COVID? Certainly this was an unprecedented situation, but we were very aware from the very beginning of the COVID confinement of the situation of the interns, and that they fell into a vulnerable category. So all interns were contacted at the start of the transition to teleworking in order to check on their individual well-being and address any specific issues that they had, whether contractual, set up for teleworking, etc. WIPO maintained all stipends, of course. We supported teleworking arrangements where possible, providing whatever equipment was necessary for that, where possible, and seeing as to all interns being set up for their needs. And we also extended on a monthly basis, I think this is very important, any contracts that were coming to an end under the same conditions, and sometimes even beyond our sunset clause of 1 year, if necessary, until interns could travel home. So we didn't want anyone to be left in a situation where they were unable to travel home, their contract was coming to an end, they would have no legal status in Geneva, and we felt this would be unacceptable. So we really went case by case and did whatever was necessary to make sure that their situation was normalized. So during that period of full confinement, the first time, we did not take on any new interns. Of course, we did not feel that fully remote internships would be in line with the learning objectives of the program, and that interns would not be well integrated into the team, might suffer isolation, etc. We had some new interns joining in September, early October, when we had partial working from the office. And this enabled them to come to the office on some days, meet colleagues, have induction, meet their supervisors and fellow team members. And since then, we've moved back to working fully on teleworking basis, but we feel they're able to transition because they've met the team, they've had those initial contacts. So that has helped a lot. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that it's easy for them. And we're certainly we recognize the fact that, it reduces spontaneous interaction with the team. It gives limited exposure to the wider organizational functioning. It creates a higher dependence on the supervisor, isolation, feeling disconnected, etc., as well as it is difficult to monitor their well-being. Of course, supervisors should be doing that, but we haven't yet. I think it is time that perhaps we do another reaching out to the interns in general to see how they're faring right now. But of course, they had already joined the organization, and we felt it's also important, given also some of what was shared earlier, to provide individuals with these opportunities in a very difficult time. Fresh graduates who, are perhaps despairing at the lack of opportunity right now, at the lack of, normal job market avenues. And so because they had already joined the organization, we felt it was important to allow them to continue and complete their internship. Moving forward, we are taking a little bit of a different approach. We are still fully on teleworking mode, but we're reviewing requests on a case-by-case basis to see whether it is possible to have a remote internship. And these are going to be very few and far between. Mainly, the criteria we've been applying is where the intern is located, the type of work, so the TORs that are proposed, and how they plan to integrate that intern into their work with the team, etc. As well as a guarantee from the manager, or at least an intention that the intern would be able to then spend more than 50% of their total internship here on premises as soon as the situation allows that. So not to start remotely with the intention to continue on a remote basis, because that's just more practical and easier for everyone, but rather a commitment that as soon as the situation allows, that intern would be able to come. And of course, some of these cases that I'm referring to, they are interns here in Geneva, in neighboring France, in Europe, etc., where that would be more easily possible than in further locations. And also, we are taking into consideration cases where, for example, we have an ongoing program with a certain university for their law students to do an internship with us at a very specific time in their studies, which cannot be moved or delayed. So we didn't want them to lose that opportunity. And therefore, for very, very few cases of legal interns where that setup is the case, we are allowing this type of a remote internship for very short periods. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christine. That was very informative. And now I'm gonna jump to Greg. If you could please share, you've already shared about the support that is provided pre-COVID life. You could please give some information about the response posed to the challenges posed by COVID-19.
Thank you, Diana. It's been very challenging for everybody, and so we've recognized that it is more challenging for interns because they do not have a support system or a family support system or a friend support system in Geneva or in the other duty stations. And so we've set up a buddy system amongst our colleagues so that, for mindfulness and emotional well-being, so that they have this kind of connections. But we've also given them all the tools necessary for them to work remotely, whether they're at home in Geneva or anywhere else. We have a global program, so we're doing the same for everybody. So everywhere that there has been lockdowns, interns have been given the same advice and support that we've given all our colleagues, whether they're staff or consultants or contractors. We've treated everybody the same and given them the same kind of support that they've had. We have continued to pay them the full stipend, regardless whether they're remote or coming partially to the office. We haven't stopped taking interns on board. We've taken them with the promise that as soon as lockdowns are relaxed in the duty station, that they can travel and come into the office. So we've got internships working in that way as well. As far as the opportunities go, I forgot to mention in my first answer that UNOPS, almost except for one intern who decided to go back and do another master's degree, everybody else has got jobs within UNOPS. So just yesterday, one of our colleagues from one of our intern from Malawi has got a job with our office in Copenhagen at the headquarters. So we recognize the value that interns bring to us in terms of not only their academic, but all the part-time jobs that they've done on their way to achieving their university degrees have been very useful and have been meaningful in building up their CVs that are useful for UNOPS. So we've got quite a number of people working in UNOPS who have recently been interns. So that's been a support, and we've recruited them during this COVID period. So now they've transitioned from intern to staff or consultant while they are still at home. So there has been this good transition. So we also have realized that we have quite a number of sponsored interns, like the Carlo Schmidt program from Germany and the program from Spain, and the liaison with the universities of Oxford, Cambridge, Duke, and Yale in the US. So we've got these very high-end North Hemisphere support for interns, but I personally have this issue about trying to support our interns from the global South, and in that sense, we've created a junior talent program where interns from who are nationals of the country, they once the internship is over, they can apply for this junior talent program, and they can get a contract for up to 2 years to work within UNOPS in the field. So we're doing many things to support our interns, and we're looking at innovations that come from the intern family itself within UNOPS to say what are the ways, what are the additional ways, what are the better ways in which we can support them while they transition from a learning regime to becoming a member of the main workforce of UNOPS. So that's what we've been doing and what we continue to do, and we're still looking for innovative ways. So whatever the FII can share with us, we're very happy to take that on board and see how we can implement that within our very fluid and ongoing internship program. As far as COVID is concerned, as I said, we do not differentiate amongst our personnel. So everybody has got the same level of support while they work remotely or they come into the office on some days that they can. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Greg. And as always, the FII will be more than happy to continue working with our partners to continue improving internships, sharing information from our experience and our connection to the field. And building on what you said about the opportunities that are offered in UNOPS, I would like to hear from Aminullah, perhaps, how they intend to continue dealing with the challenges posed by COVID-19 and how it will affect the opportunities offered by UNHCR.
Thank you, Diana. I think this COVID situation, it didn't create challenges only for internship, but for the working environment for each and every office. But I think UNHCR put all its efforts to facilitate the work environment for the interns. So one, as I said, that teleworking, this is exceptionally approved for the interns to work from home. And regarding the equipment, to the extent possible, UNHCR is providing the working equipment. If they are within the duty station, if they are teleworking, we have two terminologies for that: teleworking and telecommuting. If they are teleworking from the same duty station, and that office, if they are asking that office for a laptop, something, then UNHCR is providing that. Otherwise, if the intern is working from another duty station, or the intern is telecommuting from another place, then they're using their own equipment. And in terms of future opportunities, I don't know how is it in other offices, but UNHCR cannot take the interns immediately after completing an internship in UNHCR. UNHCR has a policy that if somebody complete internship in UNHCR, then after 6 months, that person can apply for a position in UNHCR. But interns can take a job as affiliate workforce, maybe under UNOPS contract or in other individual agreements. And I'm happy to say that again, that many of interns got jobs as affiliates under UNOPS contract with UNHCR, or after 6 months or 1 year, again, they got a job with UNHCR. And we have quite a number of staff now who have completed their internship in UNHCR. And actually, that's why it's this is considered as a good program for UNHCR, that we are providing workforce for not only for UNHCR but also for the other organizations. That's it, and I don't have anything specific more.
No, that's very interesting to hear. And I would ask Rafael to share very briefly, if you could, about IOM's response to COVID-19 and the opportunities offered to interns based on what has happened recently. And after that, I would like to have a few minutes for any concluding remarks any of you might have, so we can continue to the next panel, which is interns sharing their experiences from the pandemic. So if you can, Rafael.
Yes, for sure. Thank you. I would say that when the pandemic caught us, we were full of interns in headquarters and elsewhere. And all of them, they had to decide what to do. So they were all given the chance to either remain in the duty stations when that was possible, or return home, or interrupt their internship in hope that in a few months things would be better and they could resume it in person. Most people decided to keep working. Some others went home, but in any case, it was discussed with their supervisors, and we tried to accommodate them at best. I mean, the best we could. For those who could be potentially facing any problems when staying in a foreign country, they were extended beyond the usual duration of the internship, over 3 months or even more if necessary. But then we also were very mindful of serving them and getting to know their opinions and their feelings, different things. For example, the living situation, to make sure that they were living in good conditions, maybe with family members or in another way. We also wanted to know more about their mental health and whether they were feeling more anxious, more stressed, and the like, which they certainly were. According to their own responses, interns are mostly feeling uncertain, lonely, anxious, and stressed in these times. So we use that information to. Sorry, please let me know if there are any connection issues. I might have lost you for 1 second.
No, yeah, we can hear you perfectly.
Okay, good. Then I'll just keep going with the last part. So that this information was actually quite helpful and we sent it to the Staff Welfare Office, which designed in turn different resources and webinars specially tailored to interns for coping strategies, mental health and the like. And there have been counseling opportunities delivered by the Staff Welfare Office. So interns are very much aware of that, and we do hope that they are using them as any other staff member would. Then we also wanted to know how they were feeling about how satisfied they were with the support received by the supervisors, from the supervisors and from other colleagues, especially HR, and whether their coping strategies had been also negative, things like consuming alcohol or any other substances, as an anonymous survey, of course, but which allowed us to have a general idea of how interns were feeling and to first tailor our response. Then we have continued to offer virtual internships for people. We know that it's not ideal, and in many cases, interns lose some of the contact directly with the supervisors and have less learning opportunities. But in any case, we wanted to keep offering these opportunities for people, for those who return home and for those who cannot join, but would nevertheless want some experience and some exposure to the UN system and to IOM in particular. So,
brilliant, thank you. Thank you so much. Now, if any of you have any final remarks you would like to share briefly before we close this panel.
Yes, sure, if I may. I just wanted to touch on the opportunities available to WIPO interns. Just building on what the colleague from UNHCR said, we also had a mandatory break in service, but as part of our enhancements to the program in January of last year, we eliminated the mandatory break, enabling interns to apply to all types of opportunities at WIPO, including temporary positions and non-staff opportunities, in addition to fixed-term positions. Last year, we had actually 5 interns who were appointed to staff positions. That's about 10% of our internship population. 3 of them were to professional posts and 2 to general service posts. And many others were offered consultancy contracts. I just wanted to end on this note that often there's no immediate professional opportunity for which the intern qualifies in a UN organization. As you know, our requirements are quite rigid in the UN. Even at the P2 level, it requires a certain level of professional experience. So it is also important for interns to have new experiences elsewhere. Where, perhaps outside the UN system even, where entry requirements are more flexible, and then to reapply after some time, after having gained more professional experience. And in fact, 96% of our interns surveyed last year said that they felt WIPO had better prepared them, positioned them for future opportunities on the job market. So I would very much encourage interns to see the internship as a learning opportunity, and not necessarily, that it would be unsuccessful if they were not retained. But to use that as a stepping stone for accumulating new other opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this, Christine. We really couldn't we didn't have time to get to you on the opportunities that you offer as well. So it's good that you brought it up as well. I would like to share my gratitude, the FII's gratitude in general, to our very honorable participants for giving us their time and their insight. I would like to share that on YouTube, someone mentioned that they hope that there will be an overarching collaboration between UN organizations on internship to continue working on improving and sharing good practices. And we, as the FII, share that hope. And we would like to continue working with our associates and our contacts to truly work on improving good practices and improving internship experiences in COVID life and post. So thank you so much, and I will give the floor to the next panel.
Great, thanks a lot, Diana. And thank you so much again to our previous panelists. This final session of the day will round out International Intern Day. It's going to be a Q&A with interns themselves, looking at their experience during the pandemic. So if our panelists could turn on their cameras and get themselves situated, put on their headsets. While they do that, I can introduce myself. My name is Christian Johnson. I've been with the FAIR Internship Initiative for about 4 years now, which I guess makes me a bit of a grandfather of the FAIR Internship Initiative. Really excited about today's panel. Really excited about the work FII has done in 2020 as well. It's been a really tough year, as our report has shown. It's been a tough year, especially for interns. What we have maintained is our continued advocacy for paid, fair internships, as well as quality internships, ensuring that once you're in the system, you're well protected and that you're given basic labor rights. One of the best outcomes of 2020 is that we've been able to develop a strong connection to our base, and it's through events like this. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce our great panelists today who have gone through the internship during the pandemic. We have Tara Khan, who interned with UN Protocol and UNHQ New York. We have Eliza Khan with UNDESA FSDO in New York City. Vlad Chernovsky of UNODA WMD. Zolbo Bold Erden of UNDESA. Lucia Rivera of the ILO, and Alinka Radu, who interned with the WHO. Great set of panelists. Really happy to have you. Given the bit of a time crunch, I would love to just jump right in, and of course you can introduce yourselves better than I can. But with the first question, what was your experience during the pandemic? And if we could start with you, Lucia.
Hi, everyone. So as Christian mentioned, I did my internship at the ILO, and I started this internship right when the pandemic started. So it was in March, early March, and who suffered the same consequences. From to teleworking was especially rough because I had just moved to Geneva. So I was in expensive cities in the world, I must say. And that was a very difficult situation. And I guess this particular personal situation can be useful to highlight that even if we have internships where we are paid and we have more benefits than in other agencies, for example, as the ILO can offer, than other agencies still don't offer, for example, payment, we still can be in a very precarious situation just because we are interns. And the way that I saw this the most was housing, and interns have very difficult access to decent housing sometimes, mostly when we arrive to the cities where we are going to be living for sometimes a very short period of time. And I experienced this once I was
kind of cut out there.
Where to telework from. Sorry. So that was one initial experience during the pandemic in my case.
Great. Thank you so much, Lucia, for sharing that. And I wanted to highlight at the beginning, too, these events are so exciting because it's a way for other interns to learn by hearing the experience of others. Not only other interns, but also other aspiring interns. So thank you so much. Also, if I do cut you off, it's just because the connection is a little shaky. But so far, it seems to be pretty comprehensible. But our audience, please let us know. Great. So same question, if we could just move right along. Alinka, could you tell us more about your experience during the pandemic?
Yes. Hi. Yes, sure. So I interned at WHO for 7 months, and I started at the beginning of January this year. So I had some experience in the office for about 2 months, 2 months and a half. And then teleworking, it was abrupt because it happened literally overnight. On Friday, we were told that Monday we would come back to the office, business as usual. But then Saturday, they said HR sent out a communication note that everyone has to work from home. So it was definitely not expected. Took me by surprise, but the transition was pretty smooth. Thankfully, my team was always engaging, and my supervisor, and we were able to keep in touch, keep contact. If anything, our meetings increased, so we had even more contact amongst each other within our unit than before. and even within the department. But yes, there was some limitations when it came to networking and socializing with people outside the unit and outside the department. We didn't get much of that. So that was a bit unfortunate. But overall, it was a good experience given the situation, given the circumstances. Yeah.
Definitely understood. And you were interning with the WHO at the time, correct? I think you cut off there. And were there any particular challenges related specifically to the WHO internship?
Sorry, was that to me? I think you got cut off.
Yes. Yes. I'll turn my camera off. Were there any particular challenges related to the WHO internship, given the WHO's centrality to... Okay, maybe we all turn our cameras off. I don't want to be a robot for the rest of the session. Great, can you hear me now? Okay, maybe not. We're having a little difficulty, but we'll just move right along. Zolbo, if you'd be able to share about some of your experiences during the pandemic.
Sure thing. I interned at the UN DASA in the New York headquarters for 6 months from February to August. So I moved to New York City basically also right before the pandemic began. It was definitely a bummer to have to telework so soon into my internship. I think I spent only about 2 to 3 weeks in the office before everything was remote. So yeah, it absolutely, I definitely felt that it put a stop to any kind of networking opportunities or any, positive interactions I had going on in the office with other staff members that I wasn't necessarily working directly with, but I was beginning to get to know pretty well. But with that said, my personal experience was that I was working with a very tight-knit group of people. So, throughout the rest of my internship, you remain close in our interactions to kind of continue working on the very specific projects we're working on. Yeah, it was in some ways perhaps it was better financially for me to not have to live in New York City during the remote work, and as unpaid interns experience, you kind of have to have a big support to sustain yourself, especially in a big urban area like New York City. So it was good to have to. I moved back to Syracuse where I went to uni. So yeah, overall, I'm grateful to have had the internship experience, but I would prefer the personal experience there. So.
Great, thank you so much for sharing, and I think you did highlight the importance of, as well as Alinka too, the importance of having an engaged and collaborative supervisor, a tight group of staff, and just colleagues that you could bounce ideas off of. And if you can't find that, moving somewhere where you do have that support group. So Tara, would you be able to just move right along? What was your experience during the pandemic? And I believe you were interning during the GA.
Yes, thank you, Christian. So hello, everyone. Good morning from New York. I am an intern for Protocol and Liaison Service within the Department for General Assembly and Conference Management. I'm still currently in my internship. I'm in the 6th and last month. As you can see, I'll turn my video on for a minute. I'm in the office. I don't just have portraits of all of the Secretary Generals in my home. I'll turn it off just for connection purposes. So I started with telecommuting, and then about a few weeks in, I've conducted most of my internship in person at HQ in the Secretariat building and the conference building too, which has been such a privilege. And I know that's kind of atypical for most other people's internship experiences. So the pandemic has dominated most of my experience, and I'd say it's definitely come with its challenges, but also some surprising benefits. As you mentioned, Christian, my office is very heavily involved with the General Assembly. So originally it was a bit disappointing that the one time I get to intern for Protocol and Liaison, the GA, was the first ever hybrid event. But I think it also created a really interesting opportunity to have work and see the office kind of stripped of all of the usual aspects that dominate a huge portion out of the year for my colleagues. They were so occupied with the incredibly busy pattern of liaising and protocoling for the GA. I mean, there was still a lot of work, but it was less. So I think, like many of us were able to do in our personal lives, they took a step back and were like, what can we pursue right now that we haven't gotten the chance to do in the past? Such as working on their website or like the mission and vision statements. And I think that opened up a really cool side for me to observe as an intern, to really see the bare bones of the actual function and operations without like all of the glitz, I guess. It just made for a very substantial work experience. So I'd say that is probably the biggest effect the pandemic has had on my internship.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing. And I think if I had to choose an SG to have in my office or to have in my house framed, I don't know who it would be. I'd have to get back to you on that. Great. So just moving along, Eliza, if you would be able to answer same question, how was your experience during the internship? I mean, during the pandemic?
Hi, thanks so much, Christian. I'm going to try to keep my video on for this, but if I start cutting off, just please interrupt me and I'll try to turn it off for better connection issues. So my name is Eliza. I interned at the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs from February to about the end of June-ish. So I started my internship at headquarters, and then after the midway point, it became a teleworking internship. And like Alinka said, it was a very abrupt transition. And the pandemic in general has been a bit of a mixed bag for me. On the one hand, I was fortunate because I do live in New York, so I didn't have to go back home or deal with any travel issues like a lot of my colleagues did. But on the other hand, I did lose my job because of the pandemic. Fortunately for me, I was able to get by on like my savings and unemployment. But on the other hand, the UN became my sole focus. And from my team's perspective, at least, the reason that me and a couple other interns were hired on was to work on a series of projects that were coming up in the next months, namely in April, May, and June. And because of the pandemic, all of those events were at the time canceled. So it was a bit of a what is going to be our focus now? What are we going to be working on? Do I still have a role to play with this department? But we were able to transition most of those events to virtual after a while. And although in the beginning it was a bit of we did try to keep connected. I did notice that after time it became a little bit more of a struggle to like be on the same page as like the rest of my team on like various different issues. And I know it was a learning experience for all of us at the time, being that this was the first time that something like this has happened. But there was a little bit of a challenge moving forward from that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. That really does echo some of what we've heard throughout, both in the report and even from our panelists here today, that staying on the same page is very challenging inherently in the teleworking world. So it really depends on your ability, your team's ability, and your supervisor's ability to really embed you in those communication channels. Great. So just rounding out the first question, Vlad, if you could answer the same question and turn your camera on as well. And Eliza, if I could ask you to turn the camera off just to ensure optimal internet efficiency. So Vlad?
Yeah, thank you, Christian. So for me, a couple of things that I can highlight, I guess, are that, well, first of all, my internship with the UNODA was a part of my master's degree. So, basically my school kind of arranged for the internship to happen in a way, to simplify that. And the whole point of it was that I was writing a thesis on something that's called the Non-Proliferation Treaty Review Conference, which was supposed to happen in April. It's like a huge, UN event with delegations from all over the world coming to New York, and actually working there and supporting the conference. The UNODA was supposed to greatly help me with writing the thesis, and then obviously the conference was canceled. So that didn't happen. I managed to write it anyway, but I feel like I lost a huge opportunity there. And I guess the second things that I can highlight is that, I'm from Russia. And so for me, the time difference between New York and Russia makes it basically, impossible to telework from home. So I feel like for some of the international interns, this was a huge issue of choosing between continuing with the internship, considering that this is, like a great opportunity, and actually not going back home to their family. So that was one of the sources of anxiety for me, because I was trying to decide if it's worth to get on one of the last planes that were flying back to Russia, evacuating people before the total lockdown, or carry on with the internship. So yeah, and I feel like this is definitely a huge decision for me, since the bulk of my work was supposed to be with the supporting the conference. When the conference got canceled and postponed to 2021 or whatever, I started getting significantly less work. So the workload was not as extensive as it would have been. So I stayed in the US, but I feel like for me, maybe it would have been better to just, fly back and kind of be like, okay, it didn't work out. But yeah, anyway, I'm, same challenges as with everyone, I guess, in general, just not being able to talk to your supervisor easily, just communications being harder to do when teleworking. So yeah.
Vlad, I really appreciate that answer and honesty too. And I think you touched upon two really important things. The and this goes for staff and interns alike, the anxiety that the pandemic creates in terms of uncertainty of next time you'll be able to travel home. But for interns, I would say that as this is often our first foray into our careers, our professional experiences, or it's an addition onto our resume, I feel like that anxiety is heightened even more so because we are making a decision. This is something I've devoted to. This is something I've either used my savings for, or I'm going out on a financial limb here. And now I need to make a decision. Is it worth it for me to stay or leave? And you made a tough decision, and I really appreciate you sharing that with us. We have a few minutes left, about 10 minutes left before wrapping up. And I really love everything our speakers have been sharing. I'd like to jump into the last question is, how are you, or how did you make the most out of this experience given these challenges? And Tara, if I could invite you to speak first.
Sure. Thanks, Christian. I think that's a great question. And again, we've all had really different experiences. I am very privileged that I've had an incredibly positive experience. I owe a lot of that to my department and my colleagues and my boss. I kind of joke with my friends that I don't know where to go from here. I feel like they've kind of just ruined every other work experience because it just kind of feel like I'm peaking. Like I really do love it, and it's been an awesome experience because they have just really been inclusive, and I do feel like the work I'm able to do isn't just busy work. They are kind of trusting, and I know that not all interns get that experience, even sans a pandemic. So I do feel just very lucky. And then, of course, a lot of that is asking what I'm able to do and really trying to make a relationship with all of my colleagues and just be super reliable and accessible. That's difficult because we are in a pandemic, and in the US and New York, things were a little hectic, I'd say, during the election time. And I don't know, just doing your best to be accessible would be my best piece of advice.
Great. Thank you. Eliza, if you would be able to hop in and continue.
Hi. So I think in my experience, probably the best move was staying connected with the other members of my team, and especially the other interns that I work with. Like I was fortunate that I got to start in the office, so I did meet a lot of people in person, and staying connected with them, you know, after we went remote has been like a huge source of, I guess, inspiration for me to continue my work and to understand that there were people who were going through the same things that I was, and feeling the same way that I was, kind of going through the same like motions, the same struggles every day with teleworking. So I would say if you get a chance to meet other interns on your team or through the UN, like any UN groups, I would very much suggest that. I think some of the best networking I've done in the UN and outside has been among even my own peer group. So I would highly suggest that. And it's been one of the ways that has made my internship worthwhile. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for keeping that very succinct and brief, given the big time crunch. Alinka, if you would be able to answer, how did you make the most of your internship, or how are you making the most out of your internship?
Yeah, so first of all, apologies for earlier. I didn't catch your follow-up question, so I'm keeping my video off this time. So in WHO, we had a very strong intern board. We had coordinators for different areas, welfare, secretary, president, vice president, etc. And so having that intern board, which was very solid and strong, was really helpful because we were having intern board meetings on a weekly basis with the intern board, so with the interns, but then also with the human resource department. And we would brief them on what interns would like to see happen, what concerns they have, and how we can keep in touch and have a fulfilling internship experience. So having that connection with the intern board and then with human resources, we're there to listen to us, our concerns, and help us, assist us in any way. That was very valuable. And then, of course, on the point of working with the team itself and the technical unit, I can only echo what the other panelists have said, that having the connection to the team and establishing it, so that it definitely helps to start the internship in the office, to meet your colleagues face to face, and establish that connection. And then you can bring it forward with you remotely if that is necessary. So that definitely helped, having that first interaction with the team and then carrying it through. And my team has been absolutely great throughout this whole pandemic, supporting me and really valuing my contributions and keeping in touch. So I would say these three elements really helped. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very clear. Vlad, if you'd be able to continue.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Christian, again. You know, I feel like one of the things you should really do is like, you know, never hesitate to contact your supervisor and the team that you're working with. You know, sometimes, especially in the beginning of the pandemic, I would find myself, you know, hesitating before calling them or texting them again, like several times throughout the day. And so that was a mistake. I feel like you should never stop doing that. And actually, I feel like, in teleworking conditions, it's very beneficial to, talk to them even more than you usually would working at the HQ or in person. So yeah, I mean, I guess my tip or advice would just be to like always pester your supervisors and ask them for stuff for you to do, because it's their job and you're there to get the experience, and might be your only chance to get that kind of experience. So yeah.
Thanks, Vlad. Zolbo, if you'd be able to hop in.
For me, it was a lot of it was personal development in terms of how I work. Big thing was that the kind of work I was doing, it required a lot of feedback from my supervisors or colleagues, and having done during a pandemic, I didn't have that within earshot away. So it kind of forced me to not rely on feedback so much and kind of just like, follow through on what I'm doing. So, for example, I kind of I was doing some very technical work, and I kind of took some like personal classes or tutorials in programming language that I never would have done. I would have just kind of pushed that onto my other colleague. But also, it was another major component was the kind of personal relationship I developed with my supervisor and teammates, and that I'm continuing to kind of connect it with. Can you hear?
Yep, we can hear you.
So yeah, those two things. That's it.
Great, thank you. And thank you again for keeping it clear and succinct. And now lastly, Lucia, if you could finish up this question and finish up this session with how can we make the most of our internships? And how did you?
Okay, thank you, Christian. And what I have to say practically goes along with what everybody already said, because I really tried to make the most out of it, especially by reinforcing my relationship with my supervisor and trying to establish a very good communication with her. And that's really key to an internship, I believe, because as it was mentioned before, one of the key points of an internship is to learn, and that learning component is very strong. So during teleworking, it can be a bit lost. So having a strong communication with my supervisor allowed me to kind of discuss also what I was expecting to learn from the internship and what I could do as well. So that, and I also faced some time where work was very slow because of the whole pandemic that put in pause a lot of things. So trying to always take the initiative to work in other topics also, and also talk about this with my supervisor, allowed me to work with other colleagues. And it also forced me to try to network, which is very difficult under these circumstances, but it's also something that we can try to keep doing because it's one of the most important things as well, as we all know from an internship. And then, as it was also already mentioned, the IB, the intern board at the ILO, was very strong, and it was a very nice network of people who would share lots of good things and advice. And that was also one very positive aspect that allowed me to make the most of the internship and learn even more things than I would have without it. So that's my case.
Fantastic, thank you. And thank you to all our panelists today in this session. I think some key takeaways clearly is the importance of taking initiative to engage with your supervisor, to engage with your colleagues, collaborate on as many projects as possible, because really this is the first time your supervisors are going through something like this. So that, you know, they might be hard pressed to know exactly how to do this. Take a guiding hand and show them and show them where you'd like to go. Clearly indicate your expectations. In addition, the huge importance of organizing, either through pre-existing intern boards or connecting with interns in your organization, in or around your organization, sharing those experiences, and being able to really collaborate together on a path forward. So with that, again, this closes the final session of today and really closes the International Interns Day, another successful International Interns Day. I'd like to thank all of our panelists that have spoken today. Big thank you to USG Anderson from UNEP. Big thanks to Arabella and Jenny for the keynote on the COVID results of the survey, as well as our exemplary panelists from leading organizations who really show that it is possible to take the steps forward to make reform. Not only does it show an appreciation for the interns and the work that they do, but also shows an awareness of the importance of paying interns and reducing those barriers to entry, and to assuring that interns and that candidates from all backgrounds can enter the organization and live with a minimum standard of living. So really thank you to all of our speakers today, and big thanks to our interns who themselves have been in these vulnerable situations voluntarily going into organizations that they know don't pay during a pandemic and still trying to make the most of it. So you're all heroes in my eyes. Really glad to have spoken with you all today. Just before we close out, it would be great if everyone could take a moment to check out the internship survey, the 2019 internship report on our survey. It reinforces everything we've been speaking about today. These aren't just anecdotes. This is backed by clear experiences and facts that FII has recorded and analyzed, both our survey for internships in 2019, but also the effect of unpaid internships during COVID. So definitely take a moment to check that out sometime this weekend. It's a great read. And I want to reinforce that FII will continue its work advocating for paid internships and for quality internships, both at the UN and throughout the UN system. And lastly, thanking our audience. If any of you in the audience have interest in continuing the conversation, feel free to connect with us offline. We are always open to new members, whether you are currently an intern, a former intern, or you just want to become an intern, or you just care about labor causes. Please feel free to reach out to us from anywhere in the world. We're happy to take you on board. So big thanks to everyone again. Thanks to our audience, our speakers, and another great successful event. Take care, everyone.